Hello guys, I'm Super Ron. Welcome back to the channel, and we are back at Auto Shack and back on this absolutely stunning C5 RS6. As you've seen in the previous episodes, we have been diving deep. We dropped the engine out to fix a whole load of problems, and our list kept growing and growing and growing. But all the jobs would have been near impossible to do in the car anyway, so I'm really glad we had the engine out and we could do them properly. So in the last episode, we went top to bottom on the engine, sorting all the oil leaks. We had rocker covers, we had cam seals, we had crank seals, and then we got all the servicing done. We got a new cam belt kit, new thermostat, new water pump, new cam chain tensioners, and sealed it up with all new genuine gaskets throughout. This has recently had a gearbox rebuild, and in turn, that has proven to be quite some troublesome for us. When it was put back together, lots of things were missed off, lots of things were plugged in the wrong place, and we thought that was the problem with the exhaust manifolds. They hadn't been fitted properly. But when we got them off, we saw the exhaust manifolds were actually cracked around the flanges. So they've been off to our friend Jack at Motion Fabrication. He's welded them up. That's who makes all our stainless steel exhausts, and now they're back, fully sealed and ready to go on. We also saw in the last episode that our turbos had some problems as well. The wastegate valves were stuck open slightly, so it's never making full boost. So we sent them away to Essex Turbos to have a full refresh. So we did notice there's a little bit of oil in the intercoolers as well. After a few days, they gave us the dreaded phone call of, I'm afraid we can't rebuild these turbos. The exhaust housings were full of cracks, so they couldn't use them as a rebuild. So we started going down the route of seeing what our options were. Hybrid turbos were sitting at nearly £4,000 because we didn't have an exchange unit to send with them. There were some second-hand units around, but they were probably going to be in the same condition as ours. But the very next day, Essex Turbos gave us a call back and said they've managed to source some new exhaust housings so they can do the rebuild for us. So that solved that problem that we were starting to worry about. So they are on their way back. They're due to arrive today. Some nice, pristine, fully rebuilt and balanced turbos. So until they get here, we have got one more job to do before the engine can go back in. And that is to do with the wiring loom. Previously, and we suspect it is when the gearbox came out, someone has removed the entire engine loom from the car and not put it back in the right places, resulting in things just being cable tied on, things running the wrong way around places, cables being tight and chafing through. Got lots of plugs broken. The also important airflow meters. You can see the plugs and the terminals are all broken on both sides. The usual coil packs has had their little thumb snapped off, so we've got new plugs for that. Less than ideal. As you've seen when I've been doing engine conversions in the past, these are designed to come out as one. You don't need to touch any of these parts. The loom always goes round and it fixes into the car loom at one point. So you've got the ECU, you've got your relays, all your coloured plugs. All you need to do is unplug them and then just fold it in, and the whole lot comes out at once. But at some point, someone has disconnected everything here and made a right mess of it. We also found when we were removing it, someone has bypassed some relays, and we've got a dodgy chocolate block in there, so we've got to find out what that's for, put that right, rerun all the wiring looms, get these sitting where they should be, replace all the vacuums because these are all split and broken, and just patch everything up so it's not such a mess. So I had a little look on ElsaWin, but there wasn't any clear diagrams where all the loom runs at once. If you're doing certain jobs like the rocker cover, it'll show you where the wiring runs there. If you're doing the inlet manifold, that'll show you where the injectors are run, but nothing complete together. So really what we could do is finding someone with a completely standard, unmolested C5 RS6. And I think I know a guy. It's me, I'm the guy. So this is my humble family car, completely standard and equipped with the 4.2 V8 BCY engine. So let's pop the airboxes off and see what this wiring loom looks like. So it's pretty cool having two of these in the same workshop. So let's pop the covers off, have a look at this loom. As we saw when we stripped the blue one, these just pop off. Aha, straight away I can see the one that runs over there should run underneath. Get the airbox off. And the airflow meter plug. I don't know why Audi designed them like this. So you have to lift them up and then get the plug off. Same this side. But then it does just lift off. Oh, I don't want anything going down my turbos, so we'll just put that over there. So on the front here, where this one goes up and over and stretches there where it's worn through, you can see on mine, that comes out here, goes underneath, and then to there. It does look like the wiring loom does run along the top of there. Kind of the same as that. Just this one's got a massive cable tie around there, which is a bit ugly. Mine have got more fitting ones. So I've got this one plugged here, that one under there, that one there. We haven't got one under here. So I don't know what his deal is, where he is. I've got these two on top. And it looks like mine are kind of there as well. But one thing that has always bothered me on mine, it looks like something's eaten. That definitely looks like teeth marks. All the boots have got little nibbles out of them. Wherever you look, so I reckon mine has had a mouse in at some point. So I would love to go through mine and put all new boots on and just rectify all that. So that goes over the top of there. That goes underneath there. This is how all the lambdas and secondary air injection should be plugged in, whereas the bracket's broken on that one. Here's where all the vacuums run, which we will be replacing. So that all runs at the back there. So I don't think the whole loom's got to come out, just we've got to unplug a load of these and just reroute them where they should go. It's all looking fine. T-piece like that. The boost solenoid there. That runs over the fuel rail there. Right, that's fine. Let's do some swapping. So with all these cable ties, they might not be completely original because my engine has been out once in its life. At 60,000 miles, mine had a new gearbox fitted. So all of this would have come out at one point, but most probably the engine loom would have stayed in like we just said. But possibly with other bits and pieces over the years, there has been some things moved, but this definitely gives me a really good idea. But one thing this project has made me dread, if I ever have to take my engine out for something, the amount of things that I'm gonna find as well. Right, we are starting to look much better. Bit dark under here now. We've got rid of all the crappy silicone. So now we've got the proper braided hose running to the secondary air injection valves, to the solenoid. This solenoid is for the recirc valves. So that goes to the Bailey blow-off. I've sorted all the looms out where they run. So now they run the same as mine. The one thing we were missing was whatever plugs in there. On mine, we've got one green plug here, one green plug here. On ours, we've just got this one. And then I found wrapped up was this. And what these are the knock sensors. So we've got a knock sensor there. And I guess there's a knock sensor this side somewhere, one each side. So we've got a brown and a green, and we've got a long knock sensor and a short knock sensor. Now on mine, the green is on the long knock sensor and the brown is on the short one. So another case of we've got two plugs the same size, left and right knock sensor, and they've plugged them in the wrong way. So if it detects anything, it's going to be adjusting the wrong side. So this is the long one, which is this side. So this bank should be going through here, under here, and that should be going to the green plug. So this one, funnily enough, fits way better there. And then the brown one fits way better here. Oh, look at that. So just like the lambda sensors being the wrong way around, the car was trying to adjust it one side and taking readings from the other side, when in fact it was reading the opposite bank. But now we are back in the right place. That's better. Now I'm happy with that. Everything's running where it should be. Everything's plugged in to its spot. All the brackets are on nicely. We've got all the proper hoses running fine. I didn't have to take the injection loom out, luckily, so I didn't have to take the rail off. I just had to relay them, unplug them, and move them all over. We've got everything sitting in nice. That's better. Just rerouted that a little bit nicer. So now that's exactly the same as factory. It's got the one that curves around in this way and the one that goes straight to there. So that is done. That is looking much better, just like it should. So I can put mine back together and get that all plugged in. Handy car just to have laying around. All back together. So now let's start having a look at these plugs. They're all broken, as you can see, but have got replacement. I'm perched on the gearbox and just doing the airflow meter plugs. So as you can see, they've made a right mess of these, but luckily you get the part numbers and you can buy brand new plugs. And they've got the insets in the end, which is what was missing on these ones, which is why all the terminals are all falling out. Just done that one, all good as new. So I've just jotted down all the wires just in case, but I'll do it one by one, and then we'll have a new plug on. Like so. So I went one by one, pin for pin, and swapped them all over. So now we put a little insert in, and that locks all the terminals in. Stop them being pulled out. That just slots in like that. So now put the boot on, and that's ready to go. And then we've just got our coil pack. These are the same as the 1.8 turbos. Super common for having a little tab snapped off. But again, you can get new plugs direct from Audi. So we'll swap that over. These are slightly different to the airflow meters. They just have a little horseshoe. That little purple plastic bit that you see in there. You just got to pull that out. Just wiggle in with the tool. Comes out. Put it in the new one, and then poke our little horseshoe in. Brand new plug with the tab. So finishing off the front, that's the bracket and the snub mount on. Cleaned up all the covers, so they're looking as good as new. So we're going to hide away our little Super on forever and get the covers on the front. And we can put all the accessory drives back on. These weren't available from Audi anymore, but with the part numbers, it's easy enough to find branded ones. We've got a new bearing for the middle there, direct replacement for there, and direct replacement for there, because these ones were all sounding a little bit rough, and of course it'd be front end off to replace them. So while we're all here, all new pulleys as well. So it goes from a Frankenstein to a finished engine. That looks a lot better. All the new accessory drives are all on. Haven't put the bottom pulley on yet because we've still got to do that nut up, and I'm not sure how I'm going to hold it yet, but we'll find out in the car how I'm going to do that. But that is looking good. And perfect timing, we have just got our Turbskis back. So let's open this up and check out our new snails. So all from S6 turbos, obviously. There it is. There's one and two. Also got full gasket set, which is handy because Audi said they couldn't get these manifold gaskets. All the nuts and bolts, and a little booklet. So like I said at the beginning, when they stripped them down and cleaned it up, they found the exhaust housings were full of cracks all around there. So they managed to source these second-hand ones and then fully rebuild it from there. So now we've got our wastegate washers that are actually closed and not just spinning. We've got all our new turbines in there. Everything has been cleaned up. Still got our original plaques under there. But S6 turbos have etched them all with their logo. All new wastegates as well, all new pivot arms, all new wastegates on this one. Everything is locked in and set up and ready to go. We've got all our gaskets, our flame ring, our returns, all the washers for the banjos. And before we sent them away, I did take a pictures of all the serial numbers and just checked them. So these are our original turbos, which is nice for the car. Got all the original equipment back on, just with the new exhaust housing. So let's try these back on the engine, because remember, we have to fit these and then fit the manifolds. Speaking of which, have just turned up as well. Because if you remember, the main reason for taking the engine out was because of the blowing manifolds, and they were actually blowing from a crack around the ports. So we took them to our exhaust guy and he has welded them up all the way around where they were in the factory place. It's gone over the welds where the crack was. So now these are all good as new. Also, a few people noticed that the flexi wasn't actually welded all the way around. When the flexis must have been replaced, they were done on the car, so you couldn't weld all the way. So now they are all welded all the way around as well and ready to go on. There it is, welded all the way around now, nicely. The only thing I'm going to do is these heat shields are loose. You can see the welds broke, so I'm just going to bung some tacks on there. Stop that rattling around in there. Both sides are loose, so I'll just tack them on before we fit it back in. Get up. Better. Got them reattached. Back to our instructions. So if we go installing turbocharger left side, we've done the removal. So remember, we're downpipes off, dipstick off, turbo return off, undo the manifolds from the turbo, take the manifolds off, leave the turbos in place, and then you could get to all the banjos and take them off. So we'll have to do that in reverse order. Fit the turbos, plumb in all the banjos, and then put the manifold on. It does say, note, fill turbocharger with engine oil at connection point for oil supply. So before we put the banjo on, we will fill this up with engine oil. And then installation is reversal of removal. And then when we get it all together, we have got a measurement here. We've got a check, which will be 13 millimeters. And then we do everything up tight with all our torque settings. And like I said before, if you want to get Elsa Win or the manuals for any other car, check out eManual online. I'll put the link down in the description, and if you use code RON22, you'll get 22% off. So all the bits that came with the turbos from Essex Turbos, we've got our studs, nuts and gaskets for the downpipe. These are the flame rings between the manifold and the turbo. That's for the oil drain, and these are for the banjos on the side, so that's all ready to go. From Audi, we've got our exhaust manifold gaskets. These are still the cheapest part on the car, £13 plus VAT each. Absolute bargain considering the extreme we've gone for everything else. What wasn't such of a bargain is these exhaust manifold nuts. When you bolt the manifold on, you can get to them all apart from the ones here, which go through a tube in the manifold. So it has these long ones like this that go through, so then you can do them up there. So we had to order these because it had some little universal things that weren't really the right ones on there. But remember, these £13 plus VAT each, these £18 plus VAT each, the most expensive manifold nuts ever. Luckily, we only needed 4, and all the rest were just normal priced copper nuts. So we've got the manifold, we've got the turbo, we've got all my bolts and nuts all labelled up. Remember, when we took it apart, I labelled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we do that back in reverse order. So here is left turbo. Organisation is key. And here's my left turbo bag all empty. These were the mismatch of nuts that were holding the manifolds on, not the right ones. That was our downpipe studs that all came out. These are all our banjos for the waterways and oilways. There's our oil return. And then these were just for little brackets and a dipstick and stuff. And here are our new bits. So you can see the difference between what should be there and what they'd put in. This is what was in that deep hole. Bit of a nightmare to get out. And I've just given these a little polish up to make it a bit more bearable, spending £18 on each nut. There are new studs for our downpipes, new nut, all the new nuts for the manifold, our gaskets, and all our new copper washers for our banjos. This is the firing, and the turbo has a little slot in there, so that sits in there. So it's not an actual gasket face, just that ring that clamps it together. So let's start mocking this up, and even labelled all the bits I took off, so no faffing around. We know this side is for this side. So I'm going to clean all our banjo faces up, make sure everything is spotless, and then start dropping our turbos in. And got everything spotless, everything's blown out, all the banjos, all the unions, all the faces are all spotless. It's not so critical for the water lines, but for the oil lines, they need to be absolutely spotless. You don't want any contamination in there. We are doing all this on the floor, which is less than ideal, but I'm trying to keep everything up off the floor on bags. We've also got new O-rings for the bottom of the oil returns. They're all from Audi as well. We've got 2 coolant flanges, got the oil in, then the oil return out, back to the sump. We've got 2 ports on the inlet as well. We've got this one on the intake to the turbo, so that's like a vacuum intake. And this actually links both sides together. You can see that one moving. So that links the 2 turbos together, and that goes up to this pipe here, which is for the carbon canister. So like on the 1.8 turbos, when that comes up on the intake pipe and that links in there, this one links down to both turbos at the same time. So we've got our boost reference in the compressor housing, and that's this little banjo here, and that goes up to the N75 valve. Then when the ECU tells that to open, that comes back down and actuates the actuator. So we'll get all these in, got all our bits ready. Let's get the turbo mounted in the hole. And we have got the proper Audi oil drain gaskets. These are the metal ones, so I think I'll use that instead of the ones that came with the kit. So they're metal ones to match that. So we'll get the turbo drain on the bottom, and everything of course has got a torque setting. So this is 10. They're there for a reason. And let's mount this up. In it goes. So I've got it in the intake pipe, so that will hold it in place. And we can get all these on. 35 on the coolant banjos. Check. And just put some oil down there, just to prime it up. Even though we are going to prime the oil system, because we've had all the oil lines off and all the oil filter housing off, I'll just make sure we are full in there to start with. That's all full. And 25 for the oil banjo. Here we go. Put our flame ring in. Now we're ready for the manifold. New gasket on, and you can see port size. You can see where the edge of the manifold, where the gasket is there, is a lot bigger than the size there. But when you put it on the manifold, that's the same size. So there is quite a step down going from the port in the head to the manifold. So the 14 tuning, there is room for improvement of bringing this out. But for factory, that is ready to go. I've just had a look inside the manifolds as well, which is quite interesting. I thought these were just completely open, and it's just a 4 into 1 big chamber and then goes in. But when you actually look down them, inside is different compartments. So this has got its own pipe, and it's like a tubular manifold inside. So that goes down, and that doesn't link into any of the other compartments until it's right around here. So it is like a full tubular manifold, which is pretty cool. So it must be a tubular manifold in here, and then they put this frame over the top and just weld it all hidden. So you can kind of make out these are separate runners all inside. It's like a tubular manifold, and then it's covered up, which is a shame. On it goes. And there's the 10 standard bolts just nipped up. And then we've got our super titanium magnesium Expendamondo ones go in there. And because they're so long, they stick out, so you can put a socket on it. When it had these ones on there, they were a nightmare to get out because they were right down in that hole. Now we've got the correct equipment. And the tightening sequence isn't a spiral from the center. We go all the way along the top, down, and then all the way along the bottom. And they go to 25 Newton meters. Check. That's everything on loosely. So we've just got exhaust gas temperature sensor to go in there. And I did bag them up to keep them clean. And I also labelled them near side, off side. And downpipe on with its new studs and gaskets. And then our measurement from here to here was 13 millimeters, which I think that looks good to me. So we can torque all this up. 50 on the top, 50 on the downpipe. All the gear. So here is our turbocharger system all on this side. Wasn't too bad to do as long as you get the sequence right, because you can't get to those banjos when the turbo is fitted to the manifold. But that is looking good. So now we'll go to the other side, which is exactly the same. Turbo on with the banjos. The only thing we haven't got is the boost reference. Everything else is the same. So just backtrack, before I put this turbo on, I noticed in here, you can see the flywheel in there and the teeth. And this has got a really thick piece of aluminium here, like the whole bell housing is really thick, like that thickness. So what I'm thinking, we still need to do our bottom pulley up. I was going to do it in the car, but I won't be able to get to this anchor point. So if I put that in there, that should lock against the bell housing and I'll be able to tighten it. The only minor worry is this has got to be 200 Newton meters and then 180 degrees. So I'll see what happens with steady enough. Because obviously I don't want this falling off the axle stands. There's the 200, 180. Can you get that far? That's 90. That's all of the knee on it there. Please don't fall off. 130. 160. Oh, 180. That was tight. So you can see there was my start mark. And now our finish mark is at 6 o'clock. So I can rub that off now and mark this as tight. Super Ron. That worked perfect in there. So back on the program, let's get this turbo on. So we'll go from normally aspirated to turbocharged. And there is turbo number 2, all fitted. This one took a bit of a battle. It was so much awkward to get the manifold in and out because we've got all the oil cooler and all the oil filter under it, and we've got that water pipe over it. So there's a real slim angle just to slot it in, and putting the turbo on and getting it past that was just an absolute nightmare. And then it wouldn't quite go on properly. And what it turned out in the end, because as I said, they had to change the exhaust housings, all their marks they put on, usually when they strip it, they put a mark so the exhaust housing corresponds to the core, which corresponds to the compressor housing, and they all line up. But because this is a different exhaust housing, it wasn't quite in the right place. So I just had to clock it round slightly, reset the actuator, and now we are good to go. So we're all bolted in, manifolds all in, everything's on, torqued up, downpipes on. So now we've got our 2 turbos back in together. And the back is really filling up again. You can't see much of the bell housing anymore, just like when we started. So we're running out of bits to fit together. So the last bit we're just gonna change is these lambda sensors. As you can see, you've got no hope of getting to them when it's in the car. The tunnel is here, the bulkhead is here, so they are completely covered. So it is engine out job to get them. So we managed to get a couple from TPS. So we've got some genuine Audi sensors ready to go, so I'll get them in because we don't want to get it in and then just have a lambda fault. We're not going to worry about the second lambdas because you can get to them from underneath, so if they ever need replacing, it's just a case of fishing the cable up and changing them down there. But the top ones, it's not worth the risk. Even the lambdas have a torque setting 55 newton meters. Check. And all on and plugged back into the loom. Cable tied them together nicely so they all stay not flapping around. They're all plugged into their correct colour plugs. And I've it offside and near side on the plugs, because when it's in you're not going to be able to tell which is which, and they can go in either way, which is what they were before. So just a bit of future proof in there. These are genuine sensors that I took out, so they're quite likely the original ones. These were over 200 quid each, so it's not a cheap, just because we're here we might as well do it. But it's just one of those things, the most important sensor needs to be right. So for some people, it might seem a little bit over the top going to this extreme of replacing every single nut, bolt, gasket. But this is the way to do it. Could you possibly get away with reusing some of the nuts, reusing some of the gaskets? Possibly. On a normal car, that wouldn't be such a big deal. If it did start leaking, you just replace it. But on this car, at this stage, if anything does leak, it'll be engine out again. Hence why we are doing it again, because they didn't replace everything for the first time. It's not cheap, obviously, just these bolts alone, £18 each. So you can imagine the TPS parts bill on this has got quite big. But our motto here is always use genuine stuff when you can, and then you'll just be doing it once. This car is now 22 years old, and now all this has been done, it should be good for another 22 years. And that's our motto, do it right, do it once. So with them done, are we gonna call this ready to go back into the car? No, hang on. We've got one more thing to do. Super Ron. Now we are ready. And with both turbos back on, we are now at the point where it is ready to go back in. We are in this modular unit that is just like it was in the factory, how they assemble it with everything attached, everything plugged in. We've got all our new lambdas, everything is on and ready. So now we're at the stage of our sequence to put it back in the car. So I think I'm going to wrap this episode up here. It's looking so much more tidier on top, with the loom all in the right place. All the plugs are now plugged in their holders. Everything is nice and neat. I'll have to get both cars back together once we get it in and back on the ground, and we'll take some pictures together. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Make sure you give it a like, and be sure to tune into the next one, where we will be slotting this one back in the bay and then taking it for a test drive and seeing how much better it does drive now everything is connected in the right places. So make sure you join me for that, but until next time, make sure you have fun.